I was a park ranger for over 20 years. It never ceased to amaze me just how many people would tell me about my encounters they had with the paranormal, all while camping or hiking in our very public lands. Since I've retired, I've also heard from friends and acquaintances alike that are park rangers all across the country. Stories of bizarre creatures that were disturbing and equally distressing to see. I suppose I was always logical and even scientifically minded through these perhaps crazy sightings, but you never know. Many of these people that have seen these things were always dubbed insane, lunatics, or even as they say today, imbalanced. But there's always one story that has stuck with me, because somebody died. A father and his daughter were out for a walk in the woods. Now, where they're walking is a little pond where ducks will congregate, and this local man decided to take his 5-year-old daughter down to see the pond and the ducks. The man later explained to me that as he was feeding the ducks with his daughter, he heard yelling in the trees, another person, screaming as if they were being attacked. He looked around frantically, trying to identify who or what it was that was causing all the commotion. He told me that he decided to run into the trees, following the sound, and he came across a dead body. A man who had been savagely killed was covered in blood. It was a terrible sight, and he told me he is so glad he didn't bring his daughter in with him. She stood beside the pond, forbidden to walk anywhere. The man said the killer was nowhere to be found, as he was looking for a human. But he did see some wolf-like creatures on the fringes of the woods, looking at him from the trees with red eyes. He left the dead man, went and got his daughter, and ran to safety. He was deeply distressed and agitated when he told me the story. I never forgot that story. It stayed with me all these years later, because it was real, and somebody actually died. Somebody that lost their lives at the hands of something deep in the woods. Something unknown but dangerous and violent. I've been a ranger for many years now. I've had countless encounters with the paranormal and strange creatures of all kinds while doing my daily rounds. As for this job, it's pretty normal to experience unexplainable things from time to time, though most people would normally just shrug off those events as being their imagination or overreactive nerves. One particular time, we had a report that there was a fire in the woods and smoke was seen rising. We took a walk out, myself and my colleague, expecting to come across some college kids or high school kids who, of course, had been drinking, maybe just started a fire as a prank. When we walked out, we realized we couldn't even smell smoke, which was odd. We also didn't hear any of the usual sounds that kids would make. No loud noises, no screams or laughing. Just pure silence, deep in the woods. It was incredibly unnerving. We kept walking, nonetheless, and had the exact same spot on the map. When we got there, it was just a small grassy area that had the markings of a tent, but no such tent was there. It was empty. Smoke and fire surrounded by looming dark trees. My colleague was a great hulking man, and so even I was taken aback when he screamed. He grabs onto my shoulder like a baby, almost pulling me to the ground. He kept pointing into the woods, and when I turned to see, I nearly died. It seemed to be some sort of apparition, in the shape of a human, but white, pure white, like white skin. No discernible features like a face or hair or nose or ears. Just a blank face with green like slits for eyes. It also had white skin from head to toe, and was white as a sheet. This apparition stood staring at us for what felt like an eternity. Although it was probably only like 10 or 20 seconds. It eventually seemed to disappear, not even walk away or fade, but just disappear in a flash. We eventually recovered and got out to feet. And boy, if anyone had seen us, two grown tough men in our ranger uniforms, on the floor sobbing like women. But we both felt like we had seen something beyond this world. Beyond any world. Almost an extraterrestrial. To this day, I have no idea what it was that I saw. But thankfully, never saw it again. My colleague retired after the incident and never kept in contact. I think he was so highly distressed at what had happened, he couldn't cope with being anywhere near the forest. I hope one day I find answers as to what this creature was. It would give me a definitive peace of mind. I'm a new park ranger here at Silver Lake State Park, right in the middle of Tennessee. I've been here for 2 weeks, and I love it. This is the first time in my life that I have lived someplace other than New York City. It's beautiful here, with all of its hills and mountains, trees and nature surrounding. I feel so blessed to have this job, wake up to this explosion of nature. However, there have been 1 or 2 incidents in this job I can't quite explain. One day, I was in my cabin, doing a quick check of the surrounding areas on my binoculars, and I was going from right to left to right, scanning for anything unusual. I stopped when I saw something large and brown in the distance. It looked completely bizarre. It was roughly around 6 to 8 feet tall, in the shape and form of a man, but completely covered in brown hair, with little patches of white. It seemed to be a man dressed like a dog, but this couldn't be. The face was completely dog-like, and it had the face of a wolf. I felt sick to my stomach, wondering, had somebody drugged me? Or maybe I was sleep-deprived. I watched this thing from my binoculars when it looked up, staring right at me, cold in the eye. Immediately, I fell back off my chair onto the floor, spilling my coffee everywhere. The next thing, my manager came in, asked had I been drinking. Now, I debated internally about whether I should tell him or not, but I decided to reveal all. When I told him, he simply just rubbed his chin, looked serious. He walked to the window and looked out into the vast expanse of forest and land. There's something out there that scares me. What it is, I don't have a clue. I didn't know exactly what he meant, but I took it to mean he has encountered this thing before, or at least heard reports of its existence. I wasn't completely crazy. I'm pretty sure that I've seen this creature a few weeks ago, but it disappeared quickly, as if to escape from my stare. Look, it is yet to take away the love for this job. If anything, I would like to know more what's out there, and if it wants to be discovered. I mean, sure, when rangers discovered bears for the first time, there was fear. Maybe I have discovered some new species, but a part of me feels I've encountered something terrible, something dark that has power to do terrible things. Skinwalkers are shapeshifters. They can turn into any animal that they want to, which is why it is so hard to believe in them. The main idea of this creature is to be they feared for what they may or may not do. Little is known about these creatures, but many stories are told around the Southwest states. One particular incident was told to me by my own great-grandmother. It was in fact an experience she had when she was 11 or 12. This would have been in the early 1930s. She said that she was in the Great Depression, as you would imagine, very depressing. She was helping her father on the farm, lifting bales of hay, helping to feed the cattle. She said that her feet had blisters, and her hands had sores from all the physical labor. If only kids today knew. She told me that it was around 4 p.m. in the summer. Her father was back inside, getting ready for dinner. She was still outside. She told me that she was pretty pissed off that all her brothers had gone back in. That's when she explained that something strange happened. The sun began getting really small in the sky, and bigger, and eventually disappearing behind the clouds. This left the sky very gray, and she began to fear for herself. The next thing she told me, that one of the cattle beside her began going crazy, running around and roaring, greatly agitated. It scared the heck out of her, she told me. She had no experience in calming animals, and the next thing, she said the cow ran behind some bush, then emerged as a sheep, but covered in blood, and with the face of a wolf. My great-grandmother told me she stood there, absolutely petrified, watching this sheep emerge. But not a sheep. Something else. Something dark and demonic. I remember. She broke down as she explained her story. My great-grandmother, the 90, were living such a trauma from many years before. It was deeply emotive and moving. It showed me that my trauma and pain never leaves memory. She explained that the sheep continued running around the field, scarring the cattle, maiming several of them. It looked totally crazed and bloodthirsty, and the next thing she told me was that her own father came out with the family shotgun and attempted to shoot the sheep, but it disappeared behind the bushes, never coming out. When they checked the bushes, nothing was there except some dried blood and wool. My great-grandmother said her own father moved the entire family after the incident, and, of course, regularly used blessed salt and holy water all over the farm. My great-grandmother was very into supernatural and paranormal events. She did a great deal of research on the incident, and is very convinced she saw a shapeshifter. I mean, it would make a lot of sense, as many of the characteristics of shapeshifters are fulfilled in my great-grandmother's description of the beast. I'm just sorry she is gone now. To have lived with such a traumatic memory, it must have been tough. This story, of course, has completely fascinated me, from a child to the age of 35, today. I feel compelled to put pen to paper, so they say, and share this recollection of my great-grandmother's tale with as many as possible. I mean, I feel I owe it to her. No child deserved to see such horror that is what my great-grandmother saw. So, if you are reading this, please tell me something about them. Have they always existed? How do we get rid of them? What do they do? What are they capable of? Are they all evil? I mean, are there good shapeshifters? I have so many questions, but I am committed to researching this, and hope you will bring me many answers, if not for me, for my great-grandmother. Thank you for reading.